Ukraine is planning new offensive operations, since victory cannot be achieved by defense alone. This was stated by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrskyi, in an interview with LB.ua. He emphasized that Russia's strategic plan has not changed and still envisions the occupation of all of Ukraine. Only the planned timelines are changing, as well as the available amount of weaponry and personnel. That is why we will conduct a strategically defensive operation. At the same time, we understand that victory cannot be achieved through defense alone. Therefore, and accordingly, we will also actively carry out strategic offensive operations, fighting to maintain the operational initiative, because this forces the enemy to commit and divert significant human resources, heavy weapons, and ammunition to contain our active actions, said Oleksandr Syrskyi. In response to a specific question about whether a major turning point in the war is possible this year, the Army commander explicitly stated that this will happen under a number of certain critical conditions: achieving technological superiority, winning the global economic competition, continued robust Western support, and establishing our own comprehensive domestic weapons production. In Oleksandr Syrskyi's opinion, Ukraine has every reason to achieve this. Transitioning to a new level of technological equipment for the armed forces will allow us to reduce the direct involvement of people in combat operations, increase the use of machines, primarily drone systems, and, of course, further develop artificial intelligence as the foundation for effective weapons deployment, faster response times, and decision-making, added the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, General of the Army Oleksandr Syrskyi, also stated that throughout the course of this current year, Russia plans to form at least 11 new military divisions. He suggests that the enemy is planning to conscript approximately 500,000 personnel into their ranks. Oleksandr Syrskyi suggested that Russia will continue with the strategic plans and objectives that were not fully accomplished during the last year. The general acknowledged that Russia possesses a much greater human resource potential and mobilization capacity. It is well understood by us that their mobilization potential exceeds 20 million, and they have a staggering total of almost 5 million trained personnel that the enemy can directly use to reinforce and replenish their frontline combat units. Of course, this gives them a significant advantage in staffing, Oleksandr Syrskyi solemnly shared during the briefing. At the same time, he noted that despite the enemy having fulfilled its mobilization plans by more than 100% in 2025 and bringing in various types of personnel to staff its troops, the armed forces of Ukraine managed to keep the enemy's numbers at around 711,000 personnel for almost half a year. They were unable to increase it despite fulfilling all these plans, because Russia's level of losses was much higher. Approximately 419,000 personnel, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine shared. General Oleksandr Syrskyi added that the enemy had planned to form 14 divisions, but managed to create no more than half, and even then only partially. Oleksandr Syrskyi noted that Russia's resources were spent on replenishing losses. However, in Syrskyi's opinion, Russia plans to increase the production of Shaheeds in order to use up to 1,000 of them per day. Currently, the aggressor produces about 400 Shaheeds of various types per day. General Oleksandr Syrskyi noted that he does not see any signs from Russia that it's preparing for any kind of peace negotiations. On the contrary, the Kremlin is increasing the intensity of combat operations, the number of offensive groups, and is constantly ramping up its arsenal. General Oleksandr Syrskyi emphasized that Ukraine must disrupt Russia's plans to produce kamikaze drones and create its own conditions for fair negotiations. The Commander-in-Chief also previously confirmed that Ukraine is preparing new offensive operations. That's all for now. Leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and see you next time. Let us know what you think about Syrskyi's words, and we'll read your comments.